Hi everyone, and welcome back. This is the third and final series of my 30-day sketch challenge with Christy's Beautiful Life. Welcome back, and we're going to walk through number 21 through 30. We'll go ahead and jump right in and get started. So this is sketch number 21 for day 21. The sketch prompt was rainbow. So when I did this one, again, I wanted to highlight the March cardstock carnival special, and I was using the UV coated cardstock, and I went with the rainbow theme. This was a lot of color on one page. So again, I think I talked about in my prior video that when using a lot of color, bright colors, the best thing to do to tone that down is to bring in your neutrals. So I decided to do black and white photos and then bring in neutral colored flowers as well and a neutral title. So I'm going to pull this up a little bit closer so you can see my flowers. Instead of stacking them on top of each other, I did a little bit of offset and then curled them up and also curled in my leaves. These photos were a day that I had a job interview on Zoom, and I was getting ready for it, so I was just goofing around and making some faces. So this is an interview day. And then I also added some coordinating little bows that I thought were really cute and just kind of dispersed them throughout, as well as the black liquid pearls to help tone down all of the brightness. So I stayed very true to the sketch on this one, I think. And then I just put my journaling down here at the bottom and then my date over here to the side. Okay, I talked about favorites, and I think this one hits my top 5 as well. This prompt was wood grain prompt. I kept very true to the sketch, pretty much. I did not put my long title here. These again are photos that I pulled off of Facebook of my niece, so I really don't know a lot about the backstory for this. But I loved the outfit. I love how cute. Of course, she's adorable. Who can deny that? And I just thought the wood grain would be perfect for this. And it gave me this gave me the idea of the sunflowers. So what I did is I pulled out some wood grain paper that I thought would look nice. And then you can see the color in my wood grain similar to the color in the sketch wood grain. So I pulled out my Distress Oxide inks, and just using my blending tool, I just started adding ink across the wood grain, and it turned out just absolutely perfect. I would have never thought to do that otherwise. So the film strip is from the In Full Bloom digital art set. And then I pulled out lots of stamp sets with sunflowers. So I think I used 2 different sunflower stamp sets and then my Little Besties stamp set there because I thought that one looked most closely like Eloise, is my little niece's name. For the flowers, I colored them all with our Tri-Blend markers. Took me just a little bit of blending practice and a little while to get the blending just right. And then the leaves, I didn't want them to be a bright true green, so I used, I think this is actually an antique blue that I used, but I really like how they turned out. Finally, I brought in some of the gloss spray and just did a little bit of shaking of that around my clusters as well to add just a little bit more texture on there. There is just a tiny bit of shimmer brush throughout, but not a lot. So I hope you like this one as much as I do, because I do think this is definitely in my top 5. Now I have to chuckle as we move on to this one. This is a 2-page layout. The sketch is very simple, clean line sketch. I kind of went a little crazy with it, so let me pull this out side by side. So the big debate in our household was whether or not these pictures were appropriate for scrapbooking, and I say yes. My husband was not sure. So when you see the still shots of this, you will definitely see a watermark over the photo right here. But every boy does it. If you have boys, if you have grandkids, you know that this is perfectly natural, and there's no shame in little boys going to the bathroom out in the backyard or the park or whatever. So this is a poem that was written by another scrapbooker, and I'm sure it's hard for you to see, so I will read it to you, and it's titled A Young Boy's Moment. I think that I shall never see a young boy's moment quite as free as in his yard he learns to pee. Firmly grabbing his own wee hose, he creates a puddle that grows and grows, and in the puddle are islands of toes. This is skill, you see, not mere refusal to go inside and drain his noodle. A skill as important as throwing a ball is to know what to do when nature calls. So do not fret, enjoy the show of a young boy's discovery of the backyard flow. And that was written by Mary Gunn in 2021. So I thought that that was adorable. Another Close to My Heart consultant had done a layout and used that poem and allowed me to share it via Mary Gunn. And I used this old paper packet that I had in my stash, and the gears go really well with it. And I just had a lot of fun cutting a bunch of them and putting them all together and piecing it all up. So these two pieces are popped up. Some of the photos, these three are popped up and the rest are down flat. And then you can see with my gears, I also have some dots that are just kind of put around in my visual triangles as normal, just to kind of add that extra interest. So I found this to be an adorable layout. I hope you do too. Lots and lots of fun to create. Okay, so that was 23. 24, this is 24. This is a very interesting sketch, and I was not sure how to interpret this sketch at all. The prompt was distressed edges. So I wasn't sure if in the sketch that this was like torn paper or what was happening here. So I decided that at least this was my photo area and this was my journaling area and maybe a title. So this is what I came up with, and I did lots of distressed edges. So the picture obviously is somewhat of a Western picture, so I decided to go with this theme, and all of my edges are very distressed. I did that with my scissors. I tore some. I tore out the edge of the paper here, and I even did like a hole in the paper, like I told somebody, like it had been shot through. This is a PML card that I cut down and edged. For the stickers, I had a little bit of color already on them with this color, and I added more color by just using a sponge. So I added more of this orangish color, and then up here I added the green just to, so it's not so much white. And then for the embellishments, I used the wood pieces because I thought that they went best with the Western old theme. So I added the wooden pieces as my title and the embellishments. So this was just a lot of distressing. And that was kind of my interpretation of this particular sketch. Wasn't quite sure what to do with it, but I think the interpretation came out okay. I was happy with it, at least. Now again with this one, we had hexagons again. So the prompt was Christmas, and I decided to not go with the hexagons. And since it was Christmas, I really liked the idea of ornaments. So I cut out all these ornaments with my die cut. I had a thin cut, and I used Christmas paper. I did kind of fill in some of the background with my blending brush, and I used this glacier color and just kind of blended some of that in. And then I stamped the tree stems. And I think this part really helps make the page. Did it in first and second and some third generation to kind of fill out the tree part of the layout. And I think without that, it wouldn't have been as nicely done as it is. But that's kind of my favorite part. So all of these are popped up, and they all have the little gold string, like they're ready to be hung from their branch. And then the picture, of course, was just laid down on top of them because they're popped up. I had some really old buttons that I was able to pull out, and then some dots that coordinated as well. The layout itself is triple matted, I guess double matted. And then I used my journaling pen because I saw that on the sketch it looked like it was maybe paper torn, but I wanted to try to keep in theme with that. So I went ahead and did that with my journaling pen to try to keep in line somewhat with the sketch. So I deviated a little bit, but I still think it turned out quite well with that. And I did not put on a title. I just noticed that this page does not have a title, but that's okay. I'm happy with it. So this one looks quite different from the sketch, but I did stay true. If you think about it, I did stay true to the sketch in that there's two photos, and the prompt was punches or dies. I think this is a typo. It's supposed to be dies. And I did use my star thin cut dies, and I also cut some dies, I guess, on the Cricut. So what I have here is a picture of Alex Gordon, a Royals player. I'm taking a picture of an Alex Gordon 3-foot bobblehead that my husband had and collected and took it in for a signing. And Alex had never seen one, so he was so excited to see it, he took out his phone and took pictures of it. So he signed it for my husband. They were only supposed to have one thing signed. And because Alex was so excited about it, he went ahead and added 15 World Series champs. So he was really cool about it, excited, and gave my husband a fist bump and told him how cool it was. So it was a great experience for my husband, and I wanted to capture that for him. So I have my little cluster over here, which is kind of supposed to be this, but I thought I needed to add the Royals just because it's the Royals. And then it was such a cool story. I wanted my husband to be able to document it. So I did add a hidden journaling spot here. And of course, I'm not going to journal this. I am going to make him do it. So, but it's just a great story. And for 27, we have this sketch for torn paper. So I did tear the paper, but before I did that, I kind of traced some wavy lines and then tore very carefully along those lines. And you'll notice how I overlapped them. So instead of the normal just layering, I did it a little bit different with this one. I like this story because this is close to my heart chapstick we got one year at a convention, and it smells really, really good. And I was in the car one day with my grandson, and he said, "Grandma, what does that smell?" And I didn't know what he was talking about at the time. And I was like, "Well, I don't know. What does it smell like?" And he says, "It smells like birthday cake." And so I realized it was my chapstick. And every time I use my chapstick, I always think of him, and I think it smells like birthday cake. So I really wanted to capture the story because it's so memorable to me, and I thought it was so funny. And so that's where the title comes from, Smells Like Birthday Cake. And so I thought I would do birthday cakes on here. So for my base, I did the circle stencil and my Distress Oxides and blended them in. So it's nice and bright. And then I want to show you what I did for my title. So I did not have black letters. So I used white. And I markered them with the black Tri-Blend markers because they're alcohol markers and they'll pretty much stick to everything. So I did that. And then I came on top of that with a small coat of liquid glass. And I hope that the camera is picking that up for you. So I've got that small coat of liquid glass here. and I let that sit overnight, and then that gave me some really good pieces to use for my title. So I was really happy with how the title turned out. And then I stamped all of the birthday cake pieces, of course, and cut those out. And then my journaling thing is on a picture of my life card. So that's just a really fun and unique layout. It holds pretty true to the sketch, although it's just got so much more going on than the sketch does. Okay, 28. This one, the prompt was half and half design. So I guess that meant like half and half here. I wasn't quite sure. I just kind of went with it. So I kind of kept my photos in the same area that they did. And I scrapbooked a friend of mine, close to my heart, consultant friend coming from Ohio. And the day she got here, my husband got COVID. And then the next day I did. So we only had one day to scrap together and wearing our masks before she decided that she should go home early. So the technique that I did on here that was kind of fun is I used the white foam alphabet letters. And again, they come in white, not black. So I used my markers to ink them in black. And that worked really well to make that title stand out. I also used my blending brush to add some color behind my images here. And then my shimmer brush for a little bit of splatter. My Make Memories sticker here is kind of light against that background. So I also came in with my journaling pen and just added some stitching on that word make, just to kind of try to make it stand out a little bit more. So that is my day 28. And day 29, this one was just, I think that meant 3+ shapes. It's got 3+, so I wasn't sure 3+ or 3V shapes. I deviated a little bit in the layout of the 4 photos, but I replaced one photo for journaling and then had some fun with this using the Candid Moments paper. I started out by cutting an overlay on the Cricut to make it into a stencil and then adding some of that to my base page for some texture. So you can see I've got it in my 3 areas for my visual triangle. And then I cut a ton of these different shapes from the Candid Moments stamp set. And so I've got lots of shapes there. And then I also cut some from the other, I think it's also a Candid Moments stamp set that I use. So adding some shape there, some shape in the title. This was a picture of my life card and I hand cut that down. And then of course the little bestie boy. Now the technique that I used here on the bestie boy is paper piecing. So I took this paper here that I'm using on the base and paper pieced his little denim jeans. And then there's another piece of paper in the packet that's kind of an ombre from blue to the yellow. I used that for his top and paper pieced that. And then the rest of him I used marker blending for. But I think it turned out pretty close to looking like him as possible. So his first tattoo were Batman tattoos. And that was so fun for him to get his first tattoo. And I thought, my daughter is a big Batman fan too, and I thought that I might have her do the little Batman emblem like the tattoo on his shirts for me. But that was fun. It's got lots of little texture and dimension and different techniques there. And finally, we're back to the In Full Bloom paper. So this was the sketch and the prompt was cut apart sheets. I wasn't exactly sure what that meant, so I just went with it. And I used a lot of the PML cards and cut them down, a lot of the pattern paper, cut it down to size, and then again, a lot of my floral die cuts that I popped up, popped down, lots of dimension. I added in my white gel pen. This piece here had underneath it was a punch out piece. And so I just put that down and was able to put the flower right on top of it. So what normally would have been a throwaway piece, I was able to use and turn it into an embellishment piece. I did ink all of the edges. I'm notorious for inking edges. This photo is down and this one's popped up. So I don't think there's a single layout here that I have that doesn't have anything popped up on. So this is my 30th and final page in my 30-day challenge, and I was so pleased to do this challenge. It was so much fun. You can see here I added some pearls as well. I highly recommend doing something like this. You don't have to do all 30. You don't have to do them in order or anything like that, but it was really fun. It was the first one that I've done all 30 in a month, and I am really excited about having that much scrapbooking done within a month's time. And at the end of this video, I will do still shots of all 30 so you can go back and see them all. And if you have questions, you can reach out to me and let me know, and I would be happy to help you out. And thank you so much for watching my videos today, and I appreciate your support. Have a wonderful day. Bye.